Welcome back to the Playoff of Life podcast with your host, Adrian Hatcher. This is the podcast where the game of life never stops, and apparently free agency has already begun because Bradley Beal has been traded to the Phoenix Suns. It did not take long into the NBA offseason, only a couple days after the championship was won, when Bradley Beal decided, as long as with the front office of the Washington Wizards, that their time together is done. And it is time for the Washington Wizards to go through maybe their fifth rebuild in the same amount of years. And it is time for Bradley Beal to move on to a contender, which is good news for Bradley Beal. This is exciting news. This is something that I think we definitely should talk about. So let's really dive into it. Bradley Beal, it's going to be on the Phoenix Suns. What does this mean for that organization? What does this mean for Bradley Beal's career and the amount of talent that he has around him now? And also, if this move is actually a good move for the NBA as a whole. If you like what you hear, guys, leave a like, comment, and subscribe on the podcast, as well as on Anchor. Leave a voice message, and also go into the polls, interact with the community. Really appreciate you guys. Let's get into it. So this move reminds me a lot of the Brooklyn Nets. And I don't know if it's a good thing at this moment because we haven't seen the team play. But if you can recall, everybody thought if you put Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant on the same team, and you give them above average or above level talent in terms of role players, you would be able to make it to the NBA championships. And I don't even want to say above average. They had some really, really good role players on their team when Brooklyn was at their full health. A lot of what Brooklyn messed up on was the dynamics between the players, believing that all three could gel so quickly and the chemistry would work, especially with the injuries they were facing. Brooklyn, to me, only had really 1 year to really get it right out of the 2 to 3 years that they actually were a legit team. And then James Harden was kind of like a last minute addition of like, we're going to push over the top because we have to make sure that all three of these players are ready to play during the playoffs, which truly didn't happen at all. So the Brooklyn experiment gone wrong. And we already know how that ended up with them eventually trading each individual piece. Till now, the best player on the Brooklyn Nets looks to be Mikal Bridges, which is no shot at Mikal at all. I believe Brooklyn is going to be a top tier team in the next few years once they get the superstar that they need, and they have plenty of pieces to either build around or trade to gain the right role players or the right players around the newfound team when that does happen. But Brooklyn is very, 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 how can I say it? Brooklyn is just at a certain roadmap where they've seen how this works out. And I don't know if the new owner of the Phoenix Suns understands what putting these big three together really means, because Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker are all all-star caliber players. They are all deserving of their own team and being the number one. And they also all have distinct personalities. And I don't know if it's detrimental to the team. I truly feel like in Brooklyn's case, it was detrimental to have all those personalities together. But Bradley Beal, for the last few years, has been the number one player. And he's looking to be the third option on this team. And then even after being the third option, you have to depend on whatever they can put together during the rest of the offseason in order for Phoenix to be successful. Because as we saw in the playoffs this year, the major problem with the Phoenix Suns was they didn't have the depth necessary to compete with other teams. If their star players were not on, if Kevin Durant and Devin Booker were not putting up 30 plus a game, you didn't really have a chance of winning because the role players around you could only do so much. Their roles weren't as defined as other teams. Like a team I can think of is maybe the Boston Celtics. Everybody on that team has their roles down to a T. They do exactly what they're good at. They know who to get the ball to in crunch time. They know plays that is necessary for a certain momentum swing, all that good stuff. Phoenix just acquired Kevin Durant this year. And now you're adding another all-star player. And in the grand scheme of things, yes, it looks like Phoenix is a championship contender, but we see what a championship contender actually has. Depth, chemistry. They just don't have that. It doesn't really matter how many star players you put together now, because we've seen that even if it does work, it doesn't get you as far as you think you can get. And we don't even know the point guard situation with the Phoenix Suns. All we know right now is the Phoenix Suns have a big three, a couple of really good role players, and a front office that seems like they're willing to spend any amount of money to really keep this championship thing going. But you also got rid of your coach. Monty Williams was honestly, I think, the best coach on the market. Once you got rid of Monty Williams, you have to find a good replacement. And Monty Williams being a coach of the year and getting you as far as he did with the roster you had, I don't know if you're going to find somebody that is going to gain the respect of the players, place the right game plan around all three of these players to maximize their talent and deal with the pressure and stress of being really a legit NBA head coach, because we don't really talk about it, but the head coaching job is a very stressful job that you can lose way faster than any player can ever get traded. We saw this year with the coaching. Like 4 to 5 great NBA coaches, at least in my opinion, seem to just be let go due to not reaching a goal for the year. Now, Monty Williams, in his time with the Phoenix Suns, I truly believe he was a great building block. And whatever coach they decide to add to this roster, hopefully can do a great job with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. But Bradley's going to be a third option for sure. His talent is definitely going to be maximized in certain ways. He, being the captain that he was, he actually became more of a really good passer. He's already a good shooter. Devin and Kevin got a little bit of chemistry from this postseason run. I'm never worried about Kevin Durant doing his thing, or really Devin Booker in that sense. I guess I'm more worried about the point guard situation, and also what do you do with DeAndre Ayton? DeAndre Ayton obviously isn't happy. Are you looking to trade him? Is he the next piece? Will you trade him for a Defacto really good point guard and worry about your center position and with a mid-level exception, or just a really good, decent center? I don't know if giving up Monty Williams fixed the DeAndre Ayton situation. I don't believe it did. So will that cause conflict? Like I said, this is very reminiscent of the Brooklyn Nets. Just a minute ago, the Brooklyn Nets looked like they were going to be the cream of the crop, and just as fast as they got together, they were all split apart. Now we got Kyrie in Dallas, Kevin with Phoenix, and James Harden's kind of up in the air with Philly right now. And if I can just interject for a second, I truly don't believe going to Houston is a good idea at all. I don't care how much money you throw at James Harden. He does not need to go back to Houston. That young core does not need to now deal with a point guard or combo guard that does it all and takes shots away from a Jalen Green or a Kevin Porter and the rest of that core. They need to still develop. So with that being said, Bradley Beal's in a way better situation than he was a couple weeks ago. He needed to leave. He waived the no trade clause in order to make this happen. I did see Adrian Wojnarowski. He posted that Chris Paul was a part of the deal. He's being traded for Bradley Beal. I think it's Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, a couple of picks, and multiple pick swaps. And I think a lot of people are disappointed because it doesn't seem like there are any first round picks. But I really do feel like when Bradley made the decision to go to Phoenix, you can only ask so much from the organization, because now they have the leverage. Pheonix knew or understood that Bradley wants to come to us, so we definitely going to get a deal done, and we're not going to give up as much as you want us to give up because we know he wants to come here. So there's only so much you can do in that situation. I think it was decent. We'll see how it turns out. Washington is Washington. Chris Paul is definitely not going to stay with the Washington Wizards. He's going to most likely see if they're most likely going to see if they can trade him to a contender, which is best for him. Chris Paul is too good of a player to waste any of his time on a rebuilding team. So hopefully Chris Paul finds a great landing spot with a contender that can really use a de facto point guard, a la my Chicago Bulls. But we're not going to get into that. And I think the last point I want to make about this whole trade situation is Bradley Beal. This is his opportunity, and he hasn't played a minute of basketball with these players. But I truly do believe he is always best when he can play off other greats, because him being the number one player could only get you so far. Now your talent is so overloaded. It's top loaded. Like I said though, the depth is the biggest issue, and I don't know if Bradley Beal solves that depth issue. But there's so much more time in the offseason that needs to happen that I doubt this is all the Pheonix Suns are doing. So we will see how it turns out. But very exciting, very awesome. Definitely wanted to talk about this, pick my brain on whether or not I believe Pheonix will be in the finals next year. I mean, these teams are giving up them picks real quick, and whatever players they need to throw in the match salary, they will do it if it means that they even have a shot at going deeper in the postseason. And I like it, but at the same time, you're mortgaging a lot of your future. Now, with Washington, they didn't really seem like they had too much of a future going on. So maybe this is really not a gamble. Maybe this is actually like, hey, we did the best we could. Our fan base will understand. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see what other moves are going to be made. Thank you guys for liking and subscribing on YouTube. Also, you can support us on Anchor with the voice messages. You can leave one. You can also interact with the community by interacting with the polls that we leave. Just quick questions about certain things that we talked about on the pod. If you like what you hear, guys, do all that stuff for us, and we will see you guys later.